From the studios of Foxboro Cable Access, located in the center of Foxborough, Massachusetts, you are watching Around Foxborough.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Around Foxborough. I'm your host this week. I'm Jared Craig, and I have with me Wendy Nelson. Wendy Nelson is the founder and president of the Boston Biotech Forum. She's also the head of corporate development for Danforth Advisors, and she's about to do a pretty big bucket list item. She's going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with Climb for Cancer, obviously the largest mountain in Africa. So thanks for doing that. Before we get to all of that interesting stuff, I want to hear a little bit about you. Can you tell us about who you are, how your work life informs your personal life and your relationship to Foxborough?
Sure, of course. Hi, good to talk to you. I'm Wendy Nelson. I'm born and raised here in Foxborough, lived here my whole life except for the 8 years that I was at Brown University for 3 degrees. Been in the biotech industry my whole life, my whole career as well. So I started on the science, benchtop science side and moved into various roles, project management operations, and now I sit on the business side in corporate development. About 13 years ago, I also started the Boston Biotech Forum, which convenes executives in the industry to address pertinent, relevant topics in the industry at the time. So I'm very well connected in the industry and amongst executives, and this opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro came up as it's a group of 24 of us biotech execs that are all going to climb together to raise funds for cancer research.
That's amazing. And you're funding for the Fred Hutch Cancer Center out of Seattle?
Yes.
How did you come up with that? Did they approach you? Did you approach them?
Nope. So actually, Luke Timmerman is a biotech reporter, and he lives out in the Seattle area. He has been reporting on following biotech execs and the biopharma industry for his whole career. And he has a strong relationship with Fred Hutch, and he actually summited Everest on his own to raise money for Fred Hutch back in, I believe it was 2018. And then after that, he thought, wow, this was, he had so much fun doing it. Of course, it was quite a challenge that he decided to get a group of biotech execs together. He did the first group in 2019. I was unable to join that group, and then the pandemic hit, of course. And so now this was his second group to summit, to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And again, the groups that he puts together train and raise money for cancer research for Fred Hutch.
Fantastic. So before we talk about that, you said you had 3 degrees from Brown University.
Yeah,
was it
bachelor's,
all in
master's, and PhD.
In what? It's Dr. Nelson. I'm so sorry. I didn't introduce you right. This is Dr. Wendy Nelson.
That's fine. Engineering, undergrad, and master's, and then a PhD in medical science, which was artificial organs, biomaterials, and cellular technology.
Wow.
So I'm squarely in the biotech realm.
Good for you. Congratulations. Thanks for all the work that you're doing. So it seems like Boston, at least in my sort of East Coast centric worldview, is kind of the place to be for the biotech industry. Yeah. Cambridge, Kendall Square area.
Absolutely. It's the hub, probably global hub. I mean, San Francisco would debate that, but we're certainly in the top 2, but most of us consider the center of biotech.
Okay, great. And I want to ask a little bit, why did you decide to fundraise for this climb? How has cancer affected your life? I know you have a personal touch there. Could you talk a little bit about that for us?
Absolutely, sure. So, I mean, of course, being in biotech, you see firsthand how much it costs to develop a drug, but you also see how many families are, of course, impacted by it. And as we all know, everybody knows somebody who has been impacted by cancer, right? So my personal story is that I have 3 daughters, and my middle daughter, Lindsay, when she was 4 years old, was diagnosed with Langerhans cell histiocytosis. That's another mouthful.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was very little was known about it at the time, and I actually helped do some research to help diagnose her. The doctors had it wrong at first. But
what did they think it was?
They thought it was a benign eosinophilic granuloma.
Which is a brain tumor? Or
no, so it was something that would have gone away on its own, but what she had did not go away on its own. So Langerhans cell histiocytosis, it could be in any organ or any bone of the body. She had a single lesion in her forehead. It chewed through her skull and left her with a 3 centimeter round defect through her skull, and she had needed to be, pretty much cut ear to ear, her face pulled down, and she had a bone plate put on to cover and screwed in with 4 screws to cover the defect. But it's in a way has positively, I'd say positively impacted the course of her life. And she has gone on to nursing school. She's in her final year at NYU in the honors nursing program to become a pediatric oncology nurse. And she's also a global ambassador for the Histiocytosis Association. So she's helped spread education and awareness about this condition, this disease, and she does her own fundraisers as well. So she organized her first fundraiser this fall. She's a runner, and she organized a blue ribbon run. It was called the Bridge to a Cure, because she's also in a running club called the Bridge Runners in New York. So she sort of merged the two, did this Bridge to a Cure, raised $10,000. So I decided it's time I step up and do something as well.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so great to hear. She's doing well now, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
She's studying nursing at NYU.
Yep.
And
she's still a runner. She's run the Boston Marathon. She qualified and ran the Boston Marathon when she was just 18. So yep, she's doing very well health-wise, and very proud of her. So she's helped inspire me.
Pretty remarkable family. Well, thanks for all that you do. And you talked, I've read a little bit about you, I've read some interviews you've done too, and you talk about that moment of the diagnosis. Could you take us through that, and just how, as a parent, how life-changing that moment was, and how maybe it's led you to where you are
Yeah,
today?
I mean, obviously with anyone who's faced such a diagnosis, it's crushing, especially as a parent. You wish it were you instead of your child. And she was young, and you just feel like they're so vulnerable. But in fact, kids are quite resilient, and I think it probably gave me more gray hairs than it did to her, and wrinkles. So she had her surgery, and she was ready, wanted to go right back to preschool that next week with the sutures right across her head. She wanted to go back into the pool on her swim team, and she did. So it really didn't hold her back much, but she actually started participating more in Relay for Life events, and even has given some opening remarks at a couple of Relay for Life events, and she has also given a keynote speech at one of my cancer CEO conferences. So she's been engaged in the cancer community since high school.
And so you said you helped diagnose this, you called it a defect. Is that the right word? Is it a cancer?
It's a rare form of cancer, yeah. It's about, I can't remember, 1 in 250,000 get it. Little was known about it at the time. Much more is known about it now through the work of the Histiocytosis Association, actually.
Does that happen to be based out of Boston, or are they elsewhere?
No, they're elsewhere. I think they're based out of Philly, but I'm not actually even sure. But they're a global organization that helps provide support to families and patients, and answers, and advocacy, and help spread awareness.
And so you had already gotten your doctorate at this point when you helped diagnose your daughter, and so what were you doing for work then, and were you at Danforth?
No, I've just been at Danforth for a year. Back then I was still a researcher. I was doing R&D for a company called Atlantos Pharmaceuticals, and when they said it was a benign eosinophilic granuloma, I went home and did my research on eosinophilic granulomas, and it could have been that, but it also could have been indicative of Langerhans cell histiocytosis. So I posed that in an email to the doctor that had seen her that day, and he said, "You're right, why don't you report to Dana-Farber in the morning?" So, and then it sort of went fast and furiously from there to a major surgery 3 weeks later.
So how does a layperson like myself, if I get a diagnosis for my kid, what should I go
Call me.
home and do? Yeah, now I will. Can we all call you?
It shows how you really have to advocate for yourself in this world. Do your own research, reach out to key opinion leaders, experts in the area, get multiple opinions from doctors. You really just can't sit back and take what they give you. You really need to advocate for yourself, find clinical trials if that's what it takes. Just advocate for yourself and educate yourself.
Amazing. Yeah, I can't imagine what could have been if you hadn't had the wherewithal to go that far forward. That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the Boston Biotech Forum? When did you form that, and
Sure.
And why?
Yeah, I started that about 13 years ago. I had to pivot in my career away from R&D, and mainly because she had this cancer and I had 3 little kids. It was too hard to get in and out of the city every single day. And back then, remote work or hybrid work was not a thing.
Right.
I'm aging myself. So I took a job at a CRO, a contract research organization, so I could work in business development out of my home office. But I wanted to stay connected to the scientific community and grow my network, despite being in my house. And we didn't even have Zoom back then. So I started my Boston Biotech Forum as a way really to stay connected and relevant to the community.
Great. And what does the Boston Biotech Forum do?
So I put together dinner events that have networking element, which, because of course, knowing people, your network is very important in the ecosystem. So it's content and networking. The content is, I find, interesting topics that might be relevant to kind of across companies, and find panel speakers and put together panels and have host events. And I do about 12 a year. I'm in Boston, New Haven, Connecticut, South San Francisco, out in the Bay Area, and moving into Philadelphia this spring.
Great. And so they're coming together to get more information about the biotech industry, to network themselves?
Network themselves and to discuss important topics. I mean, recently with the way the market is, we had one on the challenges of being a public company. How do you deal with it? How do you keep morale up? What do you do? How do you continue to incentivize your employees? Things like that. So we just discuss any issues that seem to be hot in the ecosystem at the time.
On the stock market, so things might be going great in the office, but the stock price is down, and that affects morale. Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
but again, I cover all kinds of topics. Cool. Fundraising, the board of directors. Selling obstacles with cell and gene therapies. Manufacturing issues, all kinds of topics.
Wow, fascinating. So, how did you get into climbing? Is it what came first? Was it you wanted to do this climb for Kilimanjaro, or were you always interested in climbing and this cancer research?
Yeah, so I'm an avid exerciser anyway. I'm a swimmer. I've run 6 marathons myself, including 3 for Boston, 2 for Progeria when Sam Burns was a young child. So I've done a lot of marathons. I've done many triathlons, including 2 half Ironman. I'm an avid hiker. My favorite summer vacations are hiking in national parks or wherever. So it just is a combination of my passions, right? I love to travel. I love to exercise. I love biotech. I want to give back. So I just put it all together into this major challenge of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
And so you know what you're getting into. You've been doing this before. You told me recently you did some training. If you want to
I did a recent training trip to Machu Picchu. It was a 4-day Inca Trail hike to Machu Picchu. It gave me a sense of what kind of gear you need to hike and sleep along the trail. We had our gear and our packs on our backs. But that trail only goes over 2 passes at 13,000 plus. So it's not that high.
Not big deal.
So the next day I did hike Rainbow
you didn't sense
Mountain.
My sarcasm. That sounds like a lot to me, and probably to people at home, but not to you.
So we did the following day. I went up to Rainbow Mountain. So that went up to an elevation of 16,500. So now you are getting a sense of the altitude, the potential of altitude sickness, et cetera. So I was fine. That was a 5-mile climb that day, fairly easy. It only took us a few hours to go up and down, even taking pictures at the top. So Kilimanjaro, I know what I'm getting into. Physical-wise, I'm not afraid of the distance or the actual hiking part. It's the altitude that's the unknown. This goes to 19,400 feet, so now you're in the severely low oxygen zone or extremely high altitude.
So you have oxygen masks?
No, it's before you need supplemental oxygen. That's usually, I think, around 22,000 feet, but anything above 17 or 18,000 is 10% oxygen instead of 21%, which we have here. So altitude sickness is very common, and it affects a lot of people very differently. And there's no correlation between how fit you are and if you're going to get it. You just don't know till you get there. So we all have to be somewhat prepared for that. You can feel nauseous, severe headaches, confusion, delirium.
Did you experience any of that Machu Picchu?
I did not. So I was fine until even up at 16,500. So again, you just don't know. This is going to be a few thousand feet higher. So but we'll see.
We're hoping, yeah. And,
Hope for the best.
If you do get that altitude sickness, is that it? Do you stop, or you're gonna?
You continue if at all possible. You have to expect to feel sick. You have to expect to get a headache, and just keep going if at all possible. We will be taking Diamox, which is sort of a preventative.
Okay.
It helps prevent the severe adverse reactions to the altitude. So hopefully we'll be okay.
Great. And how long is it? Are you gone for a week?
The trip itself is 2 full weeks, but the actual climb is 7 days. So it's 5 nights going up and 2 nights coming down. You can come down much faster because on the way up you have to acclimate. So we go pretty slow. You have to take it easy. The porters make sure you slow down and don't go too fast.
So it's guided as well. You're not just going
absolutely.
by yourself.
I don't think you're allowed to. So yeah, we're absolutely guided, and these porters are incredible. They carry your tents and your sleeping bags and your tents and all the kitchen stuff, and they cook for us the whole way. Yes. So they will be carrying all the food and the mess hall tents, and at each camp they'll set up and cook meals for us. So
similar to a Sherpa at Everest.
Exactly. We won't be starving.
Great, nice. Oh, good. And so let's talk a little bit about the fundraising push. You've committed to raising $50,000.
That's mandatory. So that's set by the Fred Hutch. Each climber has to raised at least $50,000. I've already just hit the 40,000 mark, so I only have 10,000 left.
Congratulations.
Which I'm very thankful for, grateful for all my contributors thus far, because it's a daunting amount when you first start. I mean, I don't have 50,000 worth of friends, so I've had to seek out a few corporate sponsors and try to get anybody who will support me. TD Bank here in Foxborough kicked in 1,000 for me, so
that's
they were
awesome. That's good to hear.
I'm a frequent visitor there, so they were super supportive, super excited about my climb, and they did write me a check.
Oh, good to hear.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have any events coming up? Or are you still seeking donors? How can we help?
Yeah, I'm still seeking donors. If anyone would like to reach out, there was an article in the paper, but it's on the Fred Hutch website. It's called the Kilimanjaro Climb for Cancer, or you can reach out to me, Wendy Nelson, on LinkedIn, or Wendy W. Nelson at hotmail.com is probably the easiest one. Again, that's Wendy W. Nelson, Nelson, at hotmail.com. And I'm happy to share fundraising links.
Fantastic. Yeah, because I did Google you, and you're pretty easy to find, which is it's always yeah, it's always interesting. You type in a name and then the person you're looking for.
I'm happy to hear you found me.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about why you're climbing? Why are you doing this at this time? Is it related to the experience with your daughter, or is it you feel like it's fulfilling some needs?
Yeah, it's a combination. Of course, my daughter has become more of an advocate and more of a doing more herself for the charity and for this organization. So of course, being in the biotech industry, feel like I should certainly start giving back more than than in the past. And now I'm an empty nester. All 3 of my daughters are, my oldest is out of college and my other 2 are in college, so I have a little more time. That's a big deal. I can go away for 2 weeks and it's okay.
You don't seem like the kind of person who sits still and just
No, I have plenty of
rests.
energy and I like to focus it positively. So, I think it's just the time in my life. You get into your 50s and you feel like you have to start making hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, I like that, absolutely. And so is this going to be your last big climb, or is this opening a Pandora's box of other climbs?
You never know.
We taking it? Yeah.
Yes, it might open a Pandora's box. We'll see.
Cool.
I'm really enjoying the climbing. It's a fantastic team that we're going with. We've done some training hikes together. There's a lot of camaraderie. It is very challenging, and it's going to be quite an intense 2 weeks out there. The gear list alone is daunting.
Talk a little bit about the gear list. I wanted to ask about that because you said you went to Machu Picchu as like a warm up to learn about the gear, which
Yes.
for some people that's the end all be all, right? They've done that.
So Machu Picchu had some mandatory gear, but this list is daunting. You have to have a certain kind of pack. You have to have so many certain kinds of layers, including Gore-Tex hard shell pants, a hard shell coat. It can be the temperatures at the summit are probably going to be between -20 and 0, and if it's pouring rain or really blowing wind, it can feel a lot colder. So the last couple nights as we sleep up at altitude are going to be freezing.
And it's summer there, right? Because it's Africa.
Yes.
So it's spring
opposite.
going into summer.
Yep, exactly. But it doesn't matter. 19,000 feet, it's freezing no matter what.
There's no atmosphere. Yeah.
So the cold is going to be quite a challenge too. And then there's you have to filtrate your water, so you have to have a water filtration system with you. We're not going to have any electricity for the whole time, so you have to bring a solar power panel in case if you want any kind of connectivity, and even that it's sparse. So
but every pound is precious, right?
Exactly. We have a weight limit too. So we have all this mandatory gear, and we have a gear check. We have a full day gear check the day before we start hiking. And if your gear doesn't meet the specifications to the porters, and they think you don't have what you need, they'll send you right down to a shop, and you have to purchase it at those elevated prices. So you really have to have the right gear. They won't just accept any gear.
You
it has
show
to
up
be
with the right gear.
Yeah, because it's a liability thing for them. They don't want to take anybody up there who's going to get hypothermia or get frostbite or lose fingers or toes.
Oh my gosh, no, of course not.
So it's the gear is quite an investment in and of itself, and I'm actually not sure I realized how much that was going to be when I signed up. But that's why I say maybe it won't be a one and done thing, because I'm going to have this gear now. I might as well use it more.
Have the fancy gear, why not? Yeah, that's half the battle, isn't it?
Yes, and there is a bit of some of the folks that did the first Kilimanjaro climb in 2019 in this biotech group. A lot of them are sharing some of their more expensive gear with us, and we'll do the same in return to the next group, because I'm sure there will be a next group.
That's great.
So there is a huge camaraderie around this whole effort.
So with 20 of you raising, 24 of you? Is that
Yeah, right now it's 24. There might be a couple more dropouts if they can't either raise the money or if they get some kind of injury or think they can't make it. So, we started at 28 and there have been 4 dropouts already.
But you're raising close to $1 million.
It'll be over $1 million. It'll be somewhere between 1.1 and 1.3.
And what does that money go toward?
So it all goes to Fred Hutch for research. I think 97% of the money goes purely to the research. And they actually gave us the option. I reached out to the Fred Hutch and said, hey, my daughter had Langerhans cell histiocytosis when she was a kid. Do you have any researchers there doing research relevant to this kind of cancer? And they did find a couple of researchers who are doing relevant research. Those researchers will be sending me a PowerPoint on their research in the next couple weeks. And if I like what they're doing and want to support them specifically, then my $50,000 will go specifically to their projects. Wow. So there is a bit of a, it really makes me feel good, like I know who I'm going to impact, and I'm, $50K for some start out researchers. This could be, the make or break experiment, if they get the next round of funding or something.
Absolutely.
So, and again, it's directly impacting the histiocytosis research, which means a lot to me.
Yeah, and I understood you brought some pictures as well. Could you tell us about those?
Well, yeah, there is a picture of me up on the top of actually Rainbow Mountain, I believe it is. So there's a picture of that. That was some of my training gear I was testing out. And then there's also a picture of me when I just returned from a hike in my yard. So
nice.
Here, local Foxborough. I use the state forest as a real training ground, as well as the Stairmaster at the Y. This morning I did 2,500 steps in about 25 minutes. That thing is relentless.
It just doesn't
stop. It's grueling.
That's great. And so I read the article about you in the paper that Jury wrote. It was so well done, and it's just so nice to have someone like you in our town. I mean, it
well,
has,
thank you.
I mean, honestly, we see stories about people like you on Good Morning America, and here we have you on Around Foxborough. So,
well, thank you.
Thanks
I appreciate
for coming out
that.
and doing this. Would you mind giving us either the link or your email again so that people can donate?
Absolutely. Well, my email, the easiest way is my email, wendywNelson@hotmail.com. That's Wendy, my middle initial W, NELSON@hotmail.com, and I'm happy to share the link to the Fred Hutch organization, and there's a link directly to my fundraising page. So
found your fundraising page. It is quite easy to find.
Perfect.
But thanks for all of the work that you're doing. Congratulations.
My pleasure.
We'd love to catch up with you again when you get back from the hike and hear about that, if that's okay.
I would love to share. Thank you so
Excellent.
much. I really appreciate your support, and I'm excited. Looking forward to it.
Me too. Well, thanks for coming, Wendy. I want to thank a few people before we wrap up. We have Michael Weber as our executive director at FCA TV. Paul Beck is our director for this program. Jury Love is our producer, and Fanny Mizarambe is our editor. I have been your host today, Jared Craig, with the wonderful Dr. Wendy Nelson. Please contribute to her page, and thanks for being here, Wendy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.